As 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Well, holy moly. Hey everybody, welcome to Freethought in Florida 10 minutes late. Freethought in Florida is a production of the Atheist community of Polk County. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and I think we're finally connected to both Facebook and YouTube. My wonderful co-host for tonight is Allie Ashmead. Allie, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. If I can figure out how to get off of mute. Yeah, good.
Welcome back. It's been a while since we've chatted.
Yeah,
Things
happy
been all
to
right?
be here.
It's been
Yeah,
good. You still staying home and staying away from people?
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I'm happy that way.
Yes.
I have to say, I've gotten so used to it. I don't know if I'll go back to the way things were.
Right.
Being all social. I don't know.
Yeah. I could just stay home and not have to go anywhere ever again and be perfectly okay with that. Well, before we get too far, we want to thank our patrons over at patreon.com/polkatheists. Patreon's a great way to support the ongoing production of this show, and we want to thank all of our wonderful patrons, but especially Todd. This week, we'll make a monthly pledge and support the show like Todd. And of course, if you've already spent your stimulus money, I know I have. And so if you're not in a place to make a financial pledge, that's okay too. Share out the episodes, like, subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube, help us get a broader audience and higher engagement. That would be super awesome. So our guest tonight is returning favorite, Monica Miller. Monica is legal director and senior counsel with the American Humanist Association. Monica, welcome back.
Thank you for having me. It's one of my favorite shows.
Yay! Oh, I love that. That's wonderful. Well, thanks for coming back. We're going to talk about a particular lawsuit that's been in the news lately. And then maybe we'll just sort of look at some legislation things that have been floating around. But if you have questions, you can call 253-900-2272 and we'll take some questions if you want to give us a call. So how have you been? Have you been staying away from people and hunkering down? And
oh yeah, I was really hunkered down I've been hunkered down the whole time, but like I didn't even go out on like walks and stuff. I was really I still haven't been in a grocery store. But I did get my first vaccine last week. So
oh, good.
But I feel like you guys, I feel like a house cat now, and I'm not really I'm not really sure what the next step is. Like everyone has all these COVID, post-COVID plans. Like I'm going to go get my hair cut. I wish I should do. And see this person and that person and travel. And I was just like, oh, I'm not going to kill my parents and I might not die myself. So right. It's like, I'm kind of now starting to enter oh my gosh, I could go do something potentially fun. But it really was more of the relief of I'm not going to die, not I can go to the Bahamas kind of thing. So.
Well, there's always Cancun.
And there's always where everyone got
COVID.
all those college kids last year. Oh my God.
Oh yeah. Well, oh my God. So we're looking at spring break, right? We're in Florida. Everybody's headed this way.
Oh, for sure.
You know, the theme parks are busy as hell, and it's not good. It's not good. But we are. To your point. We're starting to get people vaccinated, which means there's maybe some end in sight. And yeah, we need to watch for variants and that sort of thing. But the future's looking good, I guess, at this point.
Yeah,
right?
It's definitely better.
Yeah. And the adults are in the room. We're following the science. That makes a big difference.
That's important. Not having that layer of news anxiety where, I got to a point where I really just couldn't have the TV on. I'd put Netflix on right away, but hearing any of the news, it was just too much. I know, we're hearing about the royal family. Great. I don't follow that stuff, but it's an indication that there's no insurrections going on. There's obviously, we just had a horrible tragedy, but at least they're don't even want to say at least, they're more in the realm of normal tragedies than the world, like, the country was on fire. And now the adults are in the house. And is it the best, most ideal situation? No. But we at least have no more Trump.
Yes. And as you were talking, like, it just struck me what I've been going through the past, I don't know, few weeks since Florida session started, is that I had gotten used to that, like, oh, it's quiet now. I don't wake up every morning and do that damage report is the world on fire thing that we were doing. And it was nice and calm. And then like Florida legislature started back up, and we have been following that. And Devin and I are leading a team that is with American Atheists to, respond to some of these pieces of legislation, a pilot program that we're working on. And so here I am now again, like just the other day, it was like, oh, just kidding. The the moment of silence bill went to the House floor, and we didn't know that was coming at all. And it went and it passed. So great.
Yeah. I mean, that's the efficacy of Project Blitz and of those groups, is that they inundate and they come in fast, and it's like we're not looking, and all of a sudden what moment of silence, it's the strategy. Yeah
we're finding it difficult to, like, and again, this is the strategy, it's whack-a-mole, like legitimately. They just took a bucket and they dumped it out on the floor and said, here's all the bills, good luck. And so we're like looking through the pages going, all right, I think we'll deal with this one, and then we'll deal. Meanwhile, like 7 bills have passed, like while you're looking at one page. That's the strategy.
Distract and conquer.
Exactly. And it underscores like the imbalance of power, but also just like the David and Goliath situation that we have in our field. I mean, that you just described my career, which is like, we'll get like 1,000 complaints, and then, there's these Supreme Court cases getting handed down and this and that. And like, I'm one person, and we have Izzy, my paralegal, and we usually have like an intern or a fellow, and that's it. And so it's like, I have to look, it's like a triage, and we can all miss the mark. I mean, this case that we're going to talk about today, I happen to have a case that was directly impacted by it. But it was flying under the radar. And in fact, I was the one that encouraged them to file cert, ADF. But like the civil rights issues and everything that was kind of coming to head at the end of 2020, it was very hard to figure out which thing to focus on and where to put your energy.
Well, Allie and I were talking off air before you joined us. So I'm participating in a panel this weekend that we're going to be talking about abortion from a sort of a faith perspective, and I'm going to be the atheist humanist in the room, and so my purpose is to sort of shine the light on like twofold. First, we have common ground here that we should be working together on. Like, let's get over our differences and work together where we have common ground. And the common ground we have here is the majority of Christians in America are not the ones that are pushing all of this stuff. It's a very small group of Christians in America that are behind this, whether it's abortion rights or this anti-trans youth sports bullshit that's happening right now, or like all of these things. It comes from a very small group.
Yes.
But they have, over decades, redrawn lines here and moved some power there and shifted this and built up the walls around them to where it's nearly impenetrable at this point. And so we're at a point now where I think, like, regardless of how you feel about Trump or the last 4 years, we're at a point where our democracy is really under threat. Yeah. And I don't think enough people are seeing it that way.
They're not. And you're so right, because it is this effective strategy of distract and overwhelm. I mean, I think back to the bathroom bills and stuff, and it was like those those are important issues, but from what, talking to people and understanding the bigger picture, like that was a distraction. It was kind of the Trump strategy. It's like, tweet about this thing, get people riled up, and then I'm going to go past this thing over here, like, kind of a straw man. And we fall for it, and we have to figure out what we can do to be on the affirmative side. Like we're coming in. I don't watch sports, but I think of it as football, like from what I know about football. And like they move the line down and they pause and there's a lot of commercial. And it's like, we need to get farther in the middle of the line and then start moving into our side, like on the other side of the field.
Yep.
I gotta watch more football or figure out another analogy. I don't like war. I can't think
that's the best analogy I've heard. It's perfect.
Yeah, because we're on like whatever the line is, the 60 or something down there, and we need to at least get back into the middle. And I think before Trump took over, we were more in the middle. I mean, if you think back to like Merrick Garland coming in, I remember complaining and rolling my eyes, and I was like, that guy, like he's so vanilla, and like he doesn't have a church state record. He doesn't really have much of a record at all. Why would Obama pick that guy for Supreme Court? And now it's like, anyway, it's like after what we just went through, we just need to get further back into the middle.
We'll take it.
We'll take it. Exactly. We'll take it. I will take anything that is not Trump, really.
Yes.
It's not Trump and Putin.
Yeah. And without going too far down this rabbit hole, I think there's the cautionary tale in that is that I think what we were shown in the last 4 years is that we don't have a Trump problem. There's an America problem. There are far more people in this country that are just fine with all of those things that did happen than I think any of us wanted to admit.
Yes.
For whatever reason, right? Maybe we should have known better, maybe not, like whatever. But that was the wake-up call to say, wow, we sure do have a lot of like out and out put back on the Klan robe racists, and we have like some Christian dominionist nationalist people. Like the doors opened and they came out into the sunlight again, and that
probably picked up some people along the way.
Oh yeah.
Like
sure.
they might have been,
and they've not gone anywhere.
Yeah.
So speaking of Christian nationalists
and my involvement with them at the Supreme Court level.
Yeah. Okay. So I saw a release come out about the Supreme Court. It was a 2016 case involving free speech and religious expression on college campuses, which is there's a big deal going on right now too. There's lots of bills floating through state legislatures about, it's almost like a free speech on steroids sort of thing. Anyway, I'll refrain from trying to pronounce the names in this case out of respect for those individuals. But so I we can talk about some of that overall view of like, viewpoint discrimination in college campuses and that kind of stuff in a little bit. But what I thought about this case was this is the American Humanist Association and Alliance Defending Freedom, who are typically like rivals, right? Legal foes.
Yeah.
You were together on this one, and AHA actually voiced support for ADF's argument. If you're just reading the headlines, you're missing out on some really important details here. So why don't you take a minute to sort of break that down and set the stage? What happened in that case?
Yeah. So, and I would say even going a step further, I initiated in some ways that Supreme Court case by encouraging them to file cert. I think they were on the fence, and I spoke to one of their lead attorneys afterwards, and he thanked me tremendously for that extra push, because we at the cert stage, there's two stages in getting your case to the Supreme Court. Step one is petitioning for them to take it, and then step two is you file your briefs and you're in. And so as out of party people, an amicus brief, we filed two briefs, one at the cert stage, and it was really hard finding other groups. The other secular groups didn't want to join, and I don't blame them. It's like, oh, you want to support ADF's case, and then I don't even think ACLU wanted to file one at that stage. And then when the court took it, they said okay. But here's the thing. It had nothing to do with the First Amendment, actually. Well, it did, but it had nothing to do with their underlying claims. In fact, I didn't even really want to read them. I am familiar with the basic facts of the case, but they were so far away from what I cared about, which was the reason they lost. And the reason they lost was the same reason that we could potentially lose our church state case arising out of Ocala, Florida. Did I pronounce that right, or is it Ocala?
It depends on which end of the state you live.
Yeah, so
Ocala.
Ocala. We won a case against the Ocala Police Department for staging a prayer vigil. It was a one-time event, and they weren't going to do it again, and there's no money damages to our clients. So the only thing we have under the law as a remedy is called nominal damages. It's $1. It's a symbolic but it's a symbolic remedy for the violation of your constitutional rights for which there's no actual damages. And this has been a remedy available since the common law for instances like that, where there's nothing to enjoin, there's no future activity that you're saying, court, put a halt to this, there's no jury for a big punitive damage award, there's no pain and suffering. We could make those claims, but there's no precedent really for that. All we have is this remedy called nominal damages. And many of my cases end up with that, because First Amendment violations can be fleeting. They can be one-time only things. That's very frequent. One school could one year decide to do a graduation prayer and then never do it again, but the Constitution was violated, no less.
Right.
So the remedy of nominal damages for a one-time constitutional violation, or for a case where your future claims have been moot because they changed the policy. We're talking about schools. They can change policies all the time. Local police departments can change policies all the time. All sorts of local governments don't have the same red tape as Congress. They don't have the Constitution. They can have a practice one day and change their mind. So this is this remedy of nominal damages is vital to the rule of law and to upholding the law, because if you have a right and no remedy, then you really don't have a right. And there's actually a Latin phrase that I don't have at the tip of my tongue, but it's this cardinal principle. So now we're not just talking about any right, we're talking about constitutional rights and First Amendment rights, and a remedy for them. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals ruled in ADF's case that there is no recourse and no remedy after a policy has changed. And even if the Constitution was violated, tough luck, you have no jurisdiction, get out of our court. So what the 11th Circuit basically said was that the government can violate your rights with impunity as long as it's not going to continue in the future. And as long as there's no actual damages, which in the First Amendment realm, you violate church-state separation, there's no money that comes out of that. So all of this is to say that I panicked, because if the 11th Circuit covers Georgia and Florida and Alabama, I feel like there's another state. It got broken out of the 5th Circuit, but it's a big swath. It would have been horrible for this to have been upheld. We basically would be very crippled in bringing church-state separation cases across that entire jurisdiction. And the other risk is that other circuits would pick up on that ruling and then start changing their precedent. Because for the most part, all the circuits were in agreement that if the government violates your rights, you get a remedy of $1 at least. So for them to part ways with that long-standing rule was pretty dramatic. And that's why I was equally surprised when other groups didn't, they were so deterred by ADF. And I understand, but it was kind of like, no, I'm not going to touch that. And it was like, you guys, we will not have a remedy. Like, this will really screw us up. So the First Amendment issues, and I'm definitely interested in discussing them, and viewpoint discrimination, I think ADF pushes that boundary way over the line and into other areas. But I was really happy to work with them, and I felt like it was very, it was collaborative, it was respectful, and I'm sure will help us down the road. We are in a nation right now where we need to heal and bridge ties. It's going to continue to get more polarized and divisive if we take these hardline stances of, I'm not even going to engage with these people because their views are so different. There's obviously, we have to draw the line somewhere. I'm not going to be filing anything for Nazis or this, although it would probably represent them in a pure free speech case if push came to shove, just because of the value of, the principle we're upholding. But I can't think of a good case where that would happen. But it just, so anyways, the whole reason for our involvement was the principle underlying nominal damages and the rule of law.
Right. So, okay. So back up a second. And explain, like, so what happened on this college campus that brought this to a head in the first place?
So as I understand it, there was a student that wanted to proselytize
It was like
his
handing out
religion.
literature and
Handing out literature
yeah.
on his college campus. And they had a rule, like a time, place, and manner restriction. And they said that this rule precludes you from doing that. And then the posture was weird because there was another kid involved in the timing of when they changed the policy. But the point is that they changed the policy. And then when they got to court to challenge the original situation, they said, well, the policy has changed, so there's no case left.
So shouldn't it be moot? Right.
Right. And they said it's not moot because ADF argued it's not moot because his rights were violated in the first instance under the old policy. And for that, he's entitled to at least nominal damages.
Right. Okay, got it. Yeah, it was something like they had set up free speech zones, which I don't know if it was like, you can table on the quad or whatever that, whatever that looks like. I went to college 3 times and we just didn't agree. So that's not an experience that I have lots of background on.
Yeah.
Okay, so that makes sense. So from a weird feeling standpoint, like, what's that like to pick up the phone or type out the email to say, hey, frenemy, I think you should take this case. I think you should file cert. Like,
it was funny. I mean, it really was. On the one hand, we're dealing with relatively professional people. I mean, they are lawyers and they are members of the court, and so I know I'm dealing with so many levels of wild, in this profession where I get the death threats and like crazy, religious fanatics like that you can't engage with. So I already am outside of that realm. And I've had opposing counsel unattached to any of these groups that have just been assholes, like just completely the kind of standard lawyer that you're imagining. And they're not connected to Liberty Counsel or ADF. That's their profession. And so it's kind of just depends on the person. But honestly, they were so surprised, I think, and and saw clearly that there was benefit to us kind of joining forces and helping each other out here, that it was like kind of mutually understood. But yeah, it definitely was funny. It was weird. We work with religious, I wouldn't say like allies a lot, but they're all progressive. So it was kind of my first time like joining forces with a big conservative group like that.
Right. I don't know. I'm not an optimistic person, but there's a little optimistic in me that's thinking like, yes, see, this is what I'm forever preaching, the find the common ground stuff. Like me too. Yeah. Even with our most like, with our normal enemy, there are things we agree on, and it's almost like that. The way politics used to be, where like we agree on the issue, we just disagree on how to get there or whatever.
It's like watching that clip that's been going around for a while, but it was of the first George Bush's campaign with, I think it was against Reagan, and it was like they were both in agreement that we need to, help Mexico and help homeless people and everything that was like climate change, like everything that like is now controversial. They were like 100%. Yeah. Like we have to do welfare. This is how I would do it, or this is how I would do it. But they were if I'm remembering the debate, it was the 2 Republicans were even debating like progressive things that they now deny even are an issue, or, it was so weird, but you're right. And like, and they found, the common ground was the issue, but they were discussing the nuance, like how policy used to work, where it was like the nuances, should we be giving them money or should we give them training, or should we, but there wasn't this wholesale denial that there's a problem, or even worse, like fueling it, the fueling of the problem. I mean, God, it's like, I'm glad that the Bushes came out and were pretty outspoken during Trump's situation. I don't even know, presidency. I think that helps. whatever. I like never
situation works.
Yeah, I've never called
situation
him
accurate
president, and then that last. I just can't. I could. Those words don't roll off my tongue. I just never accepted that. But it took. I feel like it took like what we thought were bad Republicans, and for them to be like, whoa, this is bad, I feel like that helped bring in kind of some of the other ones. But yeah, it was, and I think towards the end too, and I will say that was another common ground I found with opposing counsel in a lot of my cases, was the pandemic brought us together a little, and also the insurrection stuff, because a lot of these lawyers were like, whoa, we don't support this. And I think they were a little defensive calling me and stuff, because they know I'm like, you know, queen progressive humanist over here. And they were like, this one guy called and was like, are you safe? Like, are you safe from like the riots in DC? Like, not the Black Lives Matter, he meant the insurrection, and was referring to them as rioters. And I was like impressed that he was even like, I don't know, condemning it and worried about my safety. He was probably asking for an extension or something. So it's like, I'm sure he was like, but even still, like, that's how low my bar is with my opposing.
Well, look, I'm not expecting huge strides here.
Yeah.
But I'd like to think, little optimist voice in me again, I'd like to think that this goes at least some little way to, you know, building the bridge.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I also, after the case, and we kind of just did a little email high five, me and ADF guy, but, you know, I said, if you ever need a liberal snowflake, I don't know if I said, but I'm on a panel or something, like, let me, you know, include me, because it kind of opens up that door. I'm sure they have their like go-to person that is not really representative of our community. And so it kind of, and he's like, yeah, no, I'll take you up on that. Cause we were going to do an op-ed together for the New York Times. I don't know what happened with that, but it's the way to get our ideas in there. It's like part of it's an information gap, and we've got our information and they've got theirs. And the way Facebook and social media, you know, perpetuate these echo chambers, it really does take some of us going in there and sort of setting the record straight. No, we're not trying to shut down churches. We're not trying to this, that. We really want, you know, whatever. But yeah, it's a start. It's a start. And I'm always optimistic, even if it's unwarranted, but you have to hold on to hope.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
It really is a breaking down the silos. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay. So while we're talking about school speech and religion, we're following so many awful bills that are flowing through the Florida legislature. As I mentioned earlier, I made note of a few of them here that we can sort of look at. There is one that is House Bill 233, Senate 264, that would require the State Board of Education to require every Florida college, university, institution to conduct an annual assessment related to, quote, intellectual freedom and viewpoint diversity, publish such assessments annually, and prohibits the State Board of Education from shielding Florida college students, staff, and faculty from certain speech. Now, I think so much of this is born out of that, like, oh, you canceled Milo stuff. Like, you're not going to let Milo come and cause a riot, you know? Like, there are legitimate safety concerns, but this stuff comes from that, like, oh, you're censoring, you liberal colleges and you liberal Facebook, all you liberals are censoring conservative viewpoints, and so we have to protect that in some way. And I don't know that.
I mean, those ones, you're right, and I think because of that, those are the kind of bills that it's almost like, okay, fine, do that. I mean, it's like, the students will just be louder, you know? I think that's a nice indicator that they're afraid, like, you know, they know our voices are loud, and we'll find other ways to get, you know, it's like those kind of speech obstacles I see as more as obstacles. The ones that really concern me are, you know, giving religions extra special treatment, you know, because we can use those laws too. And the more the Satanic Temple gets involved with things, like, I'm always using that in my free speech cases, or, you know, my Establishment Clause cases. But okay, fine, you want to let in the Christians? Well, here's the Satanic Temple, and they're coming to town near you.
Gotta let in everyone else. Yep. And one of my clients in Florida is David Suhor. I don't know if you guys have seen his legislative prayer.
I don't think so.
You're gonna need to.
I'm gonna have
he
to look
comes
it up.
in. He rolls into, I forget which county or which one this is, but he's wearing like a Grim Reaper, like full on. with a cape, with like the cane, with the little, I don't know, the cane thing. And he comes on in and it's like, Hail Satan. These Christians are like, they're ready for Bibles. And
I know they're losing it.
I know it underscores. And he was helpful in my we had a cross case in Pensacola, and he also showed up to their little Easter events with his Satanist garb. So it like, but the ridiculousness is like they're outraged during a city council meeting, like a thing where we're supposed to talk about like planning parks and tax assessments and stuff. It's like because of your stupid legislative prayer practice, you've turned this into a shit show. Not my client, not, it's because this is an opportunity for disaster. And so I hope that the Satanists continue. I work closely with them. They had a case in Scottsdale that I helped moot for this Ninth Circuit case. And even if they lose, I hope that they make some headlines to remind people that they're active and expanding. And unless you're prepared to let in after school Satan, then be careful about your Bible study.
Well, let's come back to that in a minute. I just want to wrap this sort of thought with like the idea that like colleges are censoring a particular viewpoint, to me only extends to like, if you want to claim that the world is not an oblate spheroid, you're right. We're censoring your flat earth bullshit. You're absolutely right, because there's no scientific basis for it. This is an institution of higher education. Like they're here to learn real things. And if you want to talk philosophy stuff in a philosophy class, then those are most certainly more open to like, let's debate the finer points on all sides, right? Like, but if we're in science class and we're talking about evolution, then we're going to learn about the real things.
I was going to bring up the evolution and the Supreme Court's case, Edwards versus Aguilar. I think it was the Edwards case, where the court said that there's no, the challenge was to a statute that said if you teach evolution, you have to teach creation science or whatever. And they're like, no, because one is science, and the other one's not science. And so the schools can and need to teach science. But no, there's no constitutionality behind that. So, and what terrifies me is just the direction. I mean, like those are the cases that could be in peril by expanding legislation and the wrong Supreme Court getting its hands on something like that. Because once we start to allow pseudoscience into the classrooms, like it's there.
But we're game for everything else.
Yeah, it's there, but to allow it, to sanction it, to say it has constitutional protection would be an absolute disaster.
Yeah. We have a couple that didn't make the list for tonight, but that we've been talking about on the show, and we'll cover some of it again next week when we talk about the GSRM community. But like we're advancing this Parents' Bill of Rights in the state of Florida, which is very much a like ownership doctrine for parent, like an ownership manual for your kid. Like parents have, and in their words, authority over their children. And I'm like, look, I'm a parent. I don't own my kids.
No.
They'll be the first ones to tell you. I can't make them do a damn thing. Like they're kids. They are their own people. They're autonomous thinking individuals. They're
not. We don't allow slavery anymore.
Yes.
We don't allow and so my other line of work, as you know, Sarah, is in animal rights, and I work on person cases, and that would be a backtracking of fundamental law to say that one can own their children, that turns them into a property of sorts.
Yep, and that's how this. I mean, that's how this sort of reads.
Why do they do this? Like why?
Well, if you'll grab the Bible,
this is why I don't pay attention to the news. It makes me
grab your Bible and turn. No, I'm not going to make you do that. But you have dominion over your children. You didn't know that, but it's in the Bible. So, but this Parents' Bill of Rights stuff, it also includes an additional layer of you can go to your school and refuse your kid to take sex ed, refuse for them to learn about STI, STDs. Refuse to learn about science. Like, if you don't believe the Holocaust is a thing, you can opt your kid out of that. Like,
No!
if you don't think slavery was real, you like literally you can
See,
just go in and challenge anything in the curriculum and opt your kid out. And we're just trying to expand that further and further. And this one, we're talking like elementary, middle, high.
That's child abuse, and like kids can abuse that too by faking letters. I mean, it's like you're allowing children to not get educated. At the end of the day, it's like I already like. I mean, I still like conceptually have an issue with like just like parochial schools almost like exist. And I went to one for 10 years, and I was lucky that my Catholic school happened to be progressive, and I didn't realize that at the time. But like we were taught evolution. We didn't have all this, like, besides having to go to mass, but mass was separate from school. Like, you know, like it was like part of the day, but it was like these classes in the South in public school, they're like integrated. I mean, it's like integrated it with religion. Like you've got teachers being like, now we're doing a moment of silence. Church is a great place for you guys to go. Let's do some prayer. Let's teach evolution, but let me sneak in some stuff about creationism. You know, oh, the Holocaust wasn't real. Like what? It's child abuse.
It's disturbing.
I agree. Yeah. Like
they don't have a choice.
There is a social contract that we all enter into, which is that we value highly educated population, and to do that, we fund a system of public education. We all agreed to that. Like that's the social contract. That's the way things are set up. Now, I'm sure you know this state loves their voucher programs, and and they're trying to expand those again this year too, and they will. I should say they will. It's gonna party line vote. It'll pass. But like, okay, fine. If you don't want your kid to learn things, then don't send them to public school. But keep your sticky fingers out of my public school, because I want my kid to learn how their body works. I want them to learn real stuff. I'm with you. I mean, it's like that's kind of my retort to everything. It's like, then don't have your kid. And I realize that like private school costs money, but someone could also make a private school that doesn't cost money. Like they can figure it out. There's enough money behind all these religious groups. Like I'm with you. I'd rather than not water down. Like in some ways, I'd almost like rather than throw more money at the private school, Catholic, whatever, so that we can keep the sanctity of the public school, because it is becoming so, you know, like the law right now allows for kids to leave school to go to religious courses in the middle of a public school day. And then it leaves like 5 atheist kids in the room, you know, maybe a Jewish kid, depending on where they are. And it's like, so class is canceled because there's a few, I mean, this has come up in some of my cases. I'm like, this was once illegal, and now there's all these weird ways around it. The Fourth Circuit had this case where they basically upheld a program because it was off campus and it was an elective. And I'm like, well, what about the other kids that don't now have a class? Well, they have a class. It's like free study
time.
Hall? Okay.
Right, study hall, right. That's like, it's like, or whatever,
that's
right?
Not a class.
Like, and it would be like a video. And plus they're like the black sheep. I would, depending on where I'm at in my social life, it's hard to, I tend to be someone that wouldn't have got, you know, jumped on that with peer pressure. But so many kids probably are like, I'm not going to be staying behind. Okay. Like, I'm just going to go to the church. And then what if the parent's going to force your kid to be like an outcast? Like, it really puts a strain on families.
Right. So another one that's moving through, and this is the next two of these. This is where we call our friends at the Satanic Temple.
Yes.
So the next one is House 1027, Senate 880, opening remarks at high school athletic events. Now, Allie and I talked about your face tells me the answer to my question, but let's play the game. Let's go ahead and play the game. Allie and I talked about this back on episode 38 very briefly, as it had just been filed. But I would love to get your constitutional interpretation. So this legislation is a response to a lawsuit between Cambridge Christian School of Tampa and the Florida High School Athletic Association, who, by the way, waived an opposition to this particular bill the other day in committee, but I digress. So in 2015, Cambridge Christian and another Christian school, University Christian, were playing each other in the division championship and asked to give a joint prayer over the stadium PA, which is the thing that these Christian schools are accustomed to doing. However, the championship is regulated by the Florida High School Athletic Association, aka the government.
I remember this.
And so they correctly declined that request.
And then they found that.
Yeah. They pointed to the Establishment Clause precedent and the principle of separation of church and state. Trial court noted that on the free speech claim, all speech over the loudspeaker was government speech.
Yeah, I cited that.
Yep. Yes. Ultimately,
that line in one of my cases from
they ultimately received a ruling in 2019 in the 11th Circuit. The Christian school's right to pray over the loudspeaker before a football game did not meet the substantial burden test of Florida's Religious Freedom Restoration Act. So, I think we all know the answer to this. Your face gives it away. Is this something they can just like legislate around? Isn't this like flat unconstitutional?
Yes, I mean it is. It is flat. That does not mean very much in your area. I mean, this is why that 11th Circuit case. You know, when I was like, if the 9th Circuit had the case I joined forces with ADF, I would be less concerned because I would be like, well, California is not going to be doing that many violations. Right. I don't need to come into California and bring nominal damage cases. I bring so many cases. Most of my cases are in the 11th Circuit, and most of them involve governments that are always mooting things. So it's like, you guys, I mean, really, that is like, it's one thing to say it's unconstitutional. It's another to say it like won't exist and survive. I mean, we lost our cross case, like the one in Pensacola, and it was a plain and simple giant cross. Wasn't decades, I mean, it was decades old, but it wasn't like 100 years old like the Bladensburg one. It was an Easter cross. It was used exclusively for religious purposes. It had exclusively religious, everything about it. There was no secular tinge, and we lost. And this was with FFRA. We both brought it. And so because we had a Trump judge leading the panel, the 11th Circuit panel. So all of this is to say, can they do it? Legally, no. Are they gonna get away with it? I really hope not. I don't think that the thing is they can try to legislate that, and then we have to kind of wait and see how it pans out. You know, if they, I mean, it's that's the strategy right now, though, right? And that's how they get as far as they got on our little football field analogy. They're able to go so far and outrageously that when they do these other like things in between, it doesn't seem as big of a jump. And it's sometimes these legislative pieces, like you're familiar with the backstory and stuff, but on their face, sometimes they look very innocuous.
Right. So for me, who I'm a wonk. I love to read cases and stay up on some of this stuff. But so I read it and I go, wow, give me 5 minutes and I'll cite you some cases. There is a mountain of court precedent that says exactly that speech over a loudspeaker at a high school football game, at public education, whatever, Florida High School Athletic Association, is government speech. Period. The end. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we can trace like back to the Supreme Court cases involving daily Bible readings over the loudspeaker. The Santa Fe case was obviously the most notable one, Santa Fe versus Doe, 2000, I think just 2000 Supreme Court, where they said, they actually mentioned the loudspeaker as being a factor in whether these completely student-initiated, student-led prayers at football games were constitutional. And they said it's over the school's loudspeaker. They're delivered by students who are here to play because of the public school. The audience, the attendees here at the, whatever you call sports people, attendees. They're here because the school, invited them to be here. And the loudspeaker is the school's property and they have the ability to shut it off and control it. And so if a prayer is being delivered over that, then the reasonable interpretation is that the school is endorsing the prayer, and independent of endorsement. Just taking away, let's just say students are clear that it was the association's, whatever. At the end of the day, they're still put in this awkward position at a public school event of having to participate in that prayer with all that it implies, or protest and be an outsider, and with all that it implies, which is that black sheep kind of thing of being left, the one atheist that everyone stands up and you're like, at your sports game. So, I mean, it violates plain Supreme Court precedent too.
Right. This one, you can see that they're trying to like draw lines around the existing decisions, because it says things like the Florida High School Athletic Association will have no control over the content of such speech, and and there will be an announcement that plays beforehand that specifies that the following speaker is not endorsed by the Florida High School Athletic Association or the contents blah 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 blah, right? So one of the things that came up in, I think this was on the floor, I don't know, I've watched so much Florida Channel the last fucking week, but one of the representatives asked, okay, so nobody, like, one of the things that always comes up in graduation prayers is like, is it a prepared speech?
Right.
Does the school review prepared speeches? And you know, how does that factor in? Well, if this is not going to be reviewed or controlled at all in any way, and you're going to have no say in what's said over the loudspeaker, you're assuming with good intent that students are going to come in and want to say a lovely Christian prayer that would make your heart swell.
Yeah.
What you're not expecting is for the Satanic Temple to come in, or for somebody to just get up there and talk all kinds of gibberish about the other team and talk smack. And like, they could literally say anything, and there's no recourse written into the bill as to like what speech is okay and what speech is not, because it's just free speech. Here's your microphone.
That's exactly.
And that's because, I'm sorry, and I apologize, there's a lag, so I don't mean to talk over anyone. But and that I kind of forgot what I was going to say, but yeah, they can come in and pretty much say whatever they want, but they assume the default is a Christian prayer, and
honestly,
if that's Go ahead, sorry.
No, yeah, I was going to say, I mean, it's a good opportunity to, like, you know, when people, like our local chapters and everyone always asks, like, well, what can I do? I mean, this is a perfect example. Do you have kids? Tell your kids that they can say whatever the I don't know if I can swear, but they can say whatever they want, including that. I mean, I'm sure that they're allowed to have some like of those kind of very minimal restrictions, like they can't promote illegality or something like, oh, every kid do drugs. But like, that's what I made that point in my South Carolina Greenville school prayer case at the outset, because it was a similar thing where they said, we're adopting this hands-off policy, and that's why it's constitutional. Like, kids can get up and say whatever they want for 2 minutes. I mean, that was, they didn't say it like that. They said it was, they could give a statement. And I'm like, well, in order for you to allow prayer, it has to be any statement. So a kid could get up there and talk about turtles at a graduation ceremony. Doesn't even have to be like scary and bad. It could just be completely irrelevant. Like, you can just be like, today I had some eggs for breakfast. And do you want that at your graduation ceremony? Like, why are you, what is this?
I feel like this is, it's a time waster. This is such a time waster bill. I mean, it's really wasting everyone's time.
If you think of all the things that could be done with the amount of like time and resources that go into this crap, it really, like, you know, it's so frustrating. It's so frustrating. It puts all of us, like, people always go, oh, you must love your job and love what you do. And on the one hand, I'm glad that I'm doing stuff that I feel is meaningful. I almost can't imagine doing it otherwise. But I don't like want to do animal rights. Like, I don't want animals to be abused. Like, I don't want there to be violations of separation of church and state. Like, I would rather be a preschool teacher. That would be really fun. I would rather be frolicking around outside. But, you know, it's like, I don't want to be doing this. This is because, you know, all of this is happening because
you have to.
Legislators are right. We have to, or else everything's going to go through. So like, it's just very unfortunate. And at least having better people in power can stop this, so it doesn't have to be as like, I don't want to say vigilante, but we don't have to be the enforcers as much. I mean, the fact that, Sarah, you're sitting there like, if I'm not reading this and it's true, like, I wouldn't have gotten word about all this legislation. This is just one state, like, you know, and it's like, if you're not up to date and following everything, these things fly under the radar.
Yeah. There's so much and it hits you so fast. Yeah.
The case, the nominal damage case was like this close to just not even being taken on. And if that happened, like I said, like, we would not be able to come in and enforce violations. Like, almost, it would be really hard to, because they could change these policies so fast.
I'm sorry. All I can picture now is you teaching preschool and like, okay, we're gonna clap out the syllables now. Ready? Judiciary. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Like how them recite off Supreme Court justices and stuff.
right.
I taught
Your sight word is Ginsburg.
I taught constitutional law to these fifth through eighth graders in Vermont when I was a law school student, and they were the cutest. And
That
I taught
sounds
them
like fun.
the lemon test, and I brought in like an actual lemon, and they never got the connection. I'm like, it's a case name, and they like didn't know what a case was. I was like, it was like kind of fun, but yeah, I know I would just.
Oh, that's so funny.
I know kids are cute.
I have 2. You're welcome to borrow them anytime you like, and teach them law. My 11-year-old, he would be great as a lawyer. Okay, so that sort of leads into the next one, which we have been talking about so much. I know you're all so tired of hearing about this, but it's this damn moment of silence. And in the same way that the high school athletic thing doesn't specify anything really, right? It's like we've said for so long, no, you can't say prayer. You can't have prayer in school. So now they're like, okay, we'll call it speech or moment of silence or whatever. And,
same thing.
And and you can do prayer if you want to, but we're not saying you can't do what you can and can't do. You can do anything, right? So, so Representative Fine has brought this in the House. It passed on the floor yesterday, I think. So it's through the House. It's halfway through Senate committees, I think. But essentially, it requires, right now it's an optional thing that school districts can adopt if they want. This would make it mandatory that every classroom be provided 1 to 2 minutes of silent time to reflect during the morning, to think about life, to think about the world, to center yourself and calm. But it doesn't give you any of the tools with which to do that. And I think that's been like my biggest gripe this whole time is like, fine, if you want to teach kids mindfulness meditation and then incorporate that into the classroom, that's great. I think that's a wonderful thing. There's evidence that shows that that's effective. This, on the other hand, there is no evidence that shows that this is any meaningful positive results at all. And yet here we are. And now this is one of those too that I don't know if this is from Blitz. I haven't seen their 2021 document leaked yet. But it is definitely a model legislation that is all over the states. And we know this because some of the arguments that we presented back to the bill sponsor was, hey, Georgia has had this exact thing in place for several years now. And this year, one of their representatives filed a bill that would amend that to like specifically say a very specific prayer, words of the prayer in the actual bill to look Jesus and our Lord and Savior and thank you, amen. And then there was another one that just happened yesterday or today that we've been pushing around that was in Vermont, where one of their representatives said the quiet part out loud and was like, yep, this is about getting prayer back in school.
Wow.
So with all of that, and I'm going to look up the language of that bill because I'm just going to read it again because it's great. But while I do that, I know that there was a case recently with a moment of silence in Texas. So do you want to sort of give us a little background on that?
Yeah, I mean, so the moment of silence thing is interesting because, like you said, it's an inherently secular activity if it arises out of nothing. Like if California school wanted to just do a moment of silence because of mindfulness, it would be very different than one of these southern school districts realizing or having had their prayer statutes struck down decades ago, refashioning those in order to bring prayer into the public schools. We received a complaint a couple of weeks ago from a family in Texas who said that in their public kindergarten class, the teacher was taking the moment of silence period and was using that to say, you can pray if you want. And also, just as an aside, church is a great place to go. I mean, this teacher was, narrating to these 5 or 6 year olds, and there's no other adults in the room. It's not like there's a parent, so she can say whatever she wants. And like a 4 or 5 year old is going to come home and maybe relay some of it back to the parent, but like they wouldn't know what's noteworthy. They certainly wouldn't know if their constitutional rights were violated by a teacher suggesting that they pray. So it might not even come up, and these things go under the radar all the time. So what I'm getting at here, and so I sent a letter. And the school wrote back right away and said, we investigated.
Whoopsie doodles.
Whoopsie doodles. We've got a teacher that's on the loose proselytizing, and they assured me that
my bad.
Yeah, they told the teacher. But until these moment of silence statutes, like there has to be some. I feel like they, at this point, especially with the clear intention behind them. So the Wallace versus Joffrey case, the Supreme Court struck down. Alabama had a statute that was a prayer statute. They found school prayer unconstitutional. So Alabama amended it several times, ultimately still with some of the religious language. And then they watered it down enough to make it just a moment of silence. So by the time it was at the Supreme Court, they were looking at something that on its face looked secular. It's just a moment of silence. But back then, the Supreme Court didn't suck. And so they decided to look at the purpose behind the statute, and they looked at several of the prior bills, and it was like, gee, this is funny. It looks like you're just trying to continue your longstanding practice of school prayer, Alabama. And so they found that the statute was unconstitutional because it lacked a secular purpose. I have a grave concern that this current Supreme Court would look at something like as blatant as what you just described, Sarah, of a politician even saying that this is the prayer that we're going to give, or this is the purpose is to bring prayer back in school. And they would chalk that up as noise. Oh, well, that was just one guy, or that was this. So I don't know. I think that what has to be part of this legislation is some sort of not disclaimer, but something that instructs the students. I mean, I guess you can't really instruct them that they don't have to pray, because then it in turn implies that they can pray. And then that's, I mean, it's just a stupid, no meaningful 7-year-old is going to be able to find mindfulness by, like you said, without any instruction of just now you're going to be quiet for 2 minutes.
Right. So, so some of the things that have come out of this, like we tried several arguments, and again, we knew where this was going. It was going to go down party lines. They have filed this the last couple of years, and it passed the House every time. Last year, it flew through committee, all unanimous.
Wow.
Through every committee. But one of the things that they brought up was that last year, the bill sponsor was Kimberly Daniels. And I don't know how triggering that is to anyone else, but Kimberly Daniels was known as the Demon Buster.
Demon Buster.
Uh-huh. Yeah. So Demon Buster Daniels, who did not win re-election, was a Democrat who voted mostly leaned way to the right, voted with Republicans a lot. But she was the one who carried, she's a pastor. So she carried a lot of this church state overreach stuff while she was in the House. She was the one. There was a bill in 2017 that she was on the steps of the Capitol with a big banner that said "Put prayer back in school." Like, that's who she was. So she sponsored it last year. This year it's sponsored by a Republican, and that was pointed out of hey, last year this thing went through committee and everybody voted for it. I don't see what the problem is this year, except that maybe it's because I'm the one carrying the bill and not the other team or whatever. It was really stupid. But what it doesn't address, it doesn't address any penalty for a teacher that would go over the line like this one in Texas and proselytize or tell kids how to use the time. It specifies that that the teacher should have a conversation with the parents to say, hey, your kid's gonna have this moment of silence, and you should direct them what to do with it. The end. Which is, again, most parents are gonna be well, just sit there and be quiet for a couple minutes, I guess. Again, if the intent of this thing is to have any positive impact on mental health, it's failing at every level.
Right. It's not. It's not. It's meant to chip away at religious freedom, little by little by little.
Yep. It is a shoe in the door to try to get prayer back in school. And so what I'd love, and this is where like having relationships with legislators really helps. And we are finding that like Florida session is like 60 days. It's a fucking marathon.
Yeah.
You don't have time to like respond to all the. I understand why lobbyists exist now. I get it. You gotta have them. Like you have to.
Yeah.
But like, so you don't have time to respond to this stuff, and it's just you're racing to the finish line and trying to knock things out of your way as you go. And so like, we need to have whoever it is in the legislature that's willing to say to the okay, question to the bill sponsor. So, so you're saying that any students can do anything during this time, right? And they've asked, well, why doesn't this allow a child to opt out? Shouldn't a student be able to opt out of this? And they're the House representative, that the sponsor, just waved that away of like, well, what are they going to do to opt out? Like they're going to sit there quietly either way, right? Like. Opting out is what? Making noise and throwing footballs around? Like, we're not going to allow that to happen. They just have to be quiet. Just make them be quiet. But what happens then? And we're fine that, okay, kids want to pray quietly at their desk for 1 to 2 minutes. Okay, we're fine with that. Yep. Okay, well, how about if my kid rolls out a rug with a pentagram on it and sets up a candle and a Baphomet statue on their desk? Is that okay? He's silent. He's being quiet. He's not causing any disturbances. Is that okay? Like,
no, you're
how
so
far
right.
can you push this?
Or
Go ahead, Allie.
I was gonna say, or if they roll out a rug and it's say a Muslim prayer.
Yeah.
They would lose their shit.
It really would. It really would. And that's usually the example. And I hate invoking like Islamophobia. Like I hate like anytime I get these complaints and stuff, I'm like, okay, man, like it's slow down. What if this were a prayer to Allah and it was a teacher saying go to mosque instead of go to church? And they are usually just repulsed at the concept. And you bring up such a good point, because the Christian prayer doesn't require any like doodads. I mean, they might have a Bible on their desk.
You're quiet. Yep. Right.
But like not all prayer is. And so if this really is a time for kids to pray, if a kid is allowed to pray, in this time, and then another kid has to be allowed to pray within the confines of what that is to them. And that might involve a gong. It might involve a rug. It might involve, a Satanist ritual or potion. And obviously there's a distinction between like actions and silence. Like, but at the same time, if a single Bible is on a desk, like if a kid has a rosary, like let's get the Satanists get their stuff, whatever it takes, because the same principle is there. And and at the end of the day, it's like this, again, it's another just giant, stupid distraction. I mean, imagine waking up and being one of these guys and like, today I'm going to pass a bill where kids have to be quiet for 2 minutes. And really it's going to be like a secret thing where they can pray. It's like, oh, cool. Cool.
Well,
like that's the best thing that you could do with your power as a legislator, is sort of sneak in 2 minutes for a 7-year-old to maybe say a prayer. And you're going to fight for this. You're going to fight really hard and try to get all crafty and all like why? Like why? Like when you think about it, like why? It makes me so frustrated.
What is the time limit that they're asking for? Is it a minute, 2 minutes, 30 seconds?
No less than 1 minute, no more than 2. 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's so weird. But I think like again, there's so many directions I want to go from there. One is like, oh, but it can't create a disturbance. Okay, so we're going to allow the quiet Christian child to pray, but if I want to roll out a mat and light a candle and that causes an issue with other kids in the class, you're not going to let me do that. Now you're infringing on my rights as a Satanist, in my religious rights. And also like the idea of the old, back to that sports ball analogy, right? Is this just Rep Fine loves to say like, oh, the way we handle a big problem is to eat the elephant one bite at a time or whatever. Elephants are hard to eat one bite at a time. It's some stupid thing he says. It's really annoying. But anyway, like, okay, so once this gets through, then we just like let it die down. Nobody's talking about it anymore. And then it's, well, hey, the kids are already praying. So why don't we just let, the Christian kids go to a space by themselves and they can do their thing together. And now all of a sudden we're doing prayer at the pole. And, like, is it just taking that little step forward so that it moves the ball in that direction? I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think I have to think so. Like, I mean, clearly, it is. But I think so much of this is really just politicking. I mean, like, these guys that want to get reelected and they're in positions of power in their church and, I help get school prayer back. I mean, it's like, these are selfish legislators that do not care about their constituents. They don't, this, to me, it's like pointless legislation. And it's like, at the end of the day, okay, like, it is definitely a baby step into what their ultimate goal is. And so definitely these things need to be stopped in their tracks if we can stop them. But it's also like, it's just kind of disturbing on that same level too, again, where like, yeah, they're making traction, but to what end and why?
Right. Well, and I'll close with this on the moment of silence. They picked the right guy to carry it this year, I think, right? Where Demon Buster Daniels was obviously trying to get prayer back in school. Representative Randy Fine is Jewish. And so he brought his kids to session with him and talks about how this one just got bar mitzvahed. And, his kid, he said, had to sit through not 2 minutes, not 1 minute, 30 minutes of moment of silence because he sent his kid to a parochial school, to a Christian school. And so, of course, he didn't partake in that, 30-minute prayer time in the morning. So, he had 30 minutes of silence. Not exactly, bro. Like, he had 30 minutes of screwing off time that he got out of what everybody else had to do. And if you send your kid to a Christian school, you've got to expect that. I'm sending my kids to public school. That's very different. You chose to send your kid to a Christian school knowing that that's not his religion and that he would be exposed to those rituals and have to opt out of them or whatever.
9-day
like,
difference.
come on.
Yeah. 9-day difference.
Come on. Also, I'll have you know, Ruth is alive and well. I have her right here. She has her mask on, so she's being very safe. Everybody should have a Ruth Bader Ginsburg on.
Got my descent collar earrings.
Yes. Oh, I love it.
Kind of like blending in the background a little bit.
Fantastic.
All
right. Well, there's so much we could talk about, and we'll just have to put a recurring thing on the calendar and do this again. So what else is going on in the American Humanist Association world at the moment?
Well, we've got several cases. We still have our Arkansas case against the 10 Commandments. We have a new case this year against an Oklahoma public school for having a class called Missionaries. And they brought in missionaries to teach young children about Jesus. And this one child was subjected to this missionaries course about 9 or 10 times, most of which were without her parents' even knowledge or consent. And then the last 2 times were over their objection when they said, our kid absolutely does not want to go to a course called Missionaries and be taught about Jesus during her public school. So this was in Oklahoma. So I brought a case for punitive damages.
Okay.
This is kind of a first of its kind. There's like 1 or 2 other Establishment Clause cases involving prisoners staying too long in prison because they didn't go to, forced religious treatment. And so there was damages in those. But I'm so fed up with like these $1. This is not a $1 case. This is like you infringe so deeply on this family's rights, to raise their children the way they want to. Mm-hmm. This kid went to 11 full 40-minute classes about Jesus and God, and they would take a ball, like a beach ball, it sounds like we have very little. What we have is from like the kid and like a little bit from the school because the case just started, but they'd throw the beach ball at the kids. And then it would be like, now you say your favorite Jesus thing, or what did Jesus do? Like it would be kind of like a way to quiz them. And so this kid got the ball passed and was like, what, like, I don't know. My parents are atheists. I mean, I don't know what she said.
Wow.
Yeah. So like that's been my big ticket item case is seeking. And so if we win, I mean, like, and I'm also bringing a dollar claim too, but and I'm going after them in their personal capacities, the school officials, because they need to be the time, like that's kind of where I'm at. And I don't know if it's just my 2020 frustration. No, I mean, it's warranted because the slap on the wrist isn't working. This legislation stuff, I mean, it's a case in point. Like they are emboldened, they are continuing, and nothing's stopping them. So let's go after their pocketbooks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
You made me think of something too with the moment of silence thing, and then I lost it. I'm so mad at myself. Yeah, something you said that gave me a go back. Maybe it'll come back to me. Another thing that you mentioned earlier, but I always love to ask you about your involvement in the animal rights realm. I don't think people know that that's a thing that you do, and that you're that you're interested in, and that's sort of what brought you into the legal world in the first place. So so what's going on there?
So we have a couple exciting things right now. The most exciting one, well, we have a case. So we're trying to seek personhood rights, but just for bodily liberty. We're not looking for like animal stuff, constitutional rights. And our clients are that highly sentient, autonomous beings. So elephants and chimpanzees have been the ones we filed before. And we have a case with Happy the elephant in the Bronx Zoo. And right now we filed a petition in the highest court of New York to seek further review. And so if they take our case, it's going to be like momentous. We just filed a brief where 50 law school professors signed it, agreeing that we were right. We've already been up to this court, and we've already been up to this court where they turned us away because of a procedural thing. But we had one of the justices on New York's highest court to say that there was like tremendous merit to our argument that Happy the elephant, or that case happened to involve chimpanzees, but that chimpanzees and elephants have the autonomy and awareness to at least not be considered things, mere things, mere property, that there's no reason, like a human that in a vegetative state has more rights than an elephant. And we're not talking that the elephant should go running around with a, with a gun. We're saying the elephant doesn't belong in a prison, and that's a zoo. So, so we'll see. And like I said, we've had several justices or judges in New York issue the writ that we've been seeking, and then we lost later in the case, but we've definitely made some headway. And again, the goal is just to at least right now, it's just to break that human/non-human divide that we've had forever. It's arbitrary.
Yeah, I was going to ask, you sort of hit on it there, like, and if we get what we want here, what does that mean for zoos? Like, what does that what does that spell out for the future of zoos and what the little good they do versus the harm that they can cause,
right?
And balancing that out, that's an interesting thing to me too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so this, like, the way our cases work, it's the incremental approach. One state, one animal, one at a time. And so when we win this case, on the one hand, it's just going to free Happy, one elephant. Right. But it's precedent. And also, just since we started filing our cases like 10 years ago, the court of public opinion's really changed. My boss was on Colbert Report a couple years ago. We're in a documentary called Unlocking the Cage. I think all this stuff that we've done in the past few years has really helped change, and by years, I mean decade, but has really started to change public opinion. So it's not as crazy to say, I think that a chimpanzee shouldn't be a mere thing. I think that an elephant should be a mere thing.
Yeah. And again, like, that we talked about earlier, the idea of ownership, like like even with we have a dog and a cat, and I never I don't think of myself as a pet owner. I hate that phrase. Like, it just feels like I have
You're
animal companions, and
exactly.
And I am I just in the same way that I have some stewardship over my children, like I have responsibilities to my animal companions.
The ownership thing of owning another being, a living being, that didn't work out so well for us. So
it didn't. It really didn't. And it's like, that's why I almost had to laugh when you were saying that they were trying to do a parent bill where we would own our children. I mean, why? It doesn't. It's like, did we learn nothing from history? Like.
And I mean, they were saying things like, the parent, the state doesn't own our kids, parents do, or something like that. It was very like, very framed in ownership. Yeah, it gives me the heebie-jeebies, and I don't like it.
Well, it's the same reason that they can homeschool kids, and I have a problem with that too. I mean, it's like I feel like these radical people are a huge product of just undereducation.
Yeah.
Or wrong education, or bad education.
And that's a rabbit hole spiral down into the thing too, because like, yes, and there is a marked noticeable effort to water down education at every turn, right? We're taking money from public schools and giving them to private Christian schools in the form of vouchers. We're allowing your kids to opt out of like sex ed that will have all of the positive outcomes that we want. If you want less abortions, you teach comprehensive sex ed. This is obvious. Like at every turn, we're just like, nah, let's not educate our kids. And then we go, why is
there teenage pregnancy?
Yeah.
Why are all teenagers pregnant? We taught them not to have sex.
Yep. And why don't we have, like, why aren't people broadly intelligent? Why don't we have a highly educated population? Because we've spent decades attacking education.
Right.
Anyway.
And put no money in it.
The long-term effect of this is scary.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're
like,
seeing it.
Sarah has this pendulum theory of everything. And it's not a positive thing to think about when you start, like, processing what that means. And it's basically that, like, if we're going from, dark ages to enlightenment and the pendulum swings between the two, we're on the backswing. And the last 4 years that was like the harbinger for me of like, oh shit, we are going back to the dark ages. We are literally going to like forego fact. Like we are post-truth right now. This is scary.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's why I say there's a difference between something being unconstitutional and it being allowed.
Yep. Anyway, I could just go on and on and on. And now that you're
we gotta play our sports game and get ourselves back up into that point.
Now that you're all sufficiently depressed, what do we do about it? Join the American Humanist Association, get involved, make a donation, pay attention to the stuff that's happening in your local legislature. Call, get to know your legislators, go meet them at their office when COVID lets you. All of that stuff. We have to find ways to be more involved. And if you can't be involved, that's where you really need to lean in heavy on the national organizations and the local and the regional organizations that are doing this work, and support them financially if you can, because we've got to have some sort of response to this. We really do.
Yeah.
Monica, final words, final thoughts?
No, I'm really happy that I was able to be on the show. It was really nice meeting you, Allie. And I'm grateful that, we gotta talk today.
Yeah, anytime. You are welcome in this house anytime you like. So come back again soon. Monica Miller, American Humanist Association, Legal Director and Senior Counsel. Thank you so much.
Yay, thank you.
All right, have a good night, and we'll chat with you again soon. Okay, Allie, let's wrap up the show here. Before we go, what do you have going on? You've got a lot going on.
Yeah, and I apologize. I've had such a lag and video issues, so
no, you're good.
So I don't know how the audio is going to sound on this at all.
You're perfect. You're great.
Okay, cool. So, what do I have going on? Okay. So FBB is gearing up for the Secular Week of Action. But that Secular Week of Action actually starts April 30th and goes through May 9th. But we are kind of gearing up for it right now. And I'm sure everyone knows what Secular Week of Action is. But it's basically just a kind of, it's an alternative, I guess, to the National Day of Prayer. The National Day of Prayer is a day that the federal law has given people of faith a day to pray for the country. And this sort of leaves out a certain group of people. So, so our week of action is a bit more inclusive, and it's for all groups, whether you're, an atheist or a humanist or an agnostic, whatever your label is. But it also includes any religious groups that want to participate. And it's just a way for people to come together, make an impact on the world, on your community. And basically just mobilize this groups of people and to make, some positive change, make some good things happen. One of the things that we're doing in place of our normal monthly fireside chat, we're doing kind of a special edition next Friday. And it's let me see, I think I gave you a link, but it's a Make an Impact Secular Week of Action webinar, where we're partnering already with several organizations. AHA is one of them. And we're doing this webinar where we're going to talk to about 5 volunteer teams about how they're putting their values to work during the Secular Week of Action to combat food insecurity, homelessness, etc. And this is like a great way to get some ideas on what you can do in your own community. As everyone starts planning for the Week of Action.
And you can go to weekofaction.org to see like what all the other groups are doing and register your group if you're part of a group. People can go and find local events there and get involved that way too.
Yeah. So
Cool.
our webinar is on next Friday, I believe at 7 p.m. Eastern time, and there's on the Foundation Beyond Belief Facebook page. If you click on events, you can get to it. In addition to that, we are doing FBB is also doing a Secular Week of Action Craftathon, and that's actually started March 15th, and it's going to run all the way through May 9th. The theme this year that we're using is a compassionate response to hunger and homelessness. So we wanted to have an event that would have a direct impact on the lives of people experiencing food insecurity. So it's a kind of a craftathon and a fundraiser combined. And now a craftathon is basically where you make crafts, items that people in need might, be able to use, such as hats, blankets, hygiene kits, anything crafty. And we're basically, that's all of the proceeds all the funds that we raise and all of the different crafts are going to go to the volunteer teams for giveaways. So all the BBN teams are going to receive this kind of stuff for giveaways. So you can also sign up for that under foundationbeyondbelief.org/craftathon, or you can also, I think you could go to the Facebook page, the event page, and find it there. We're definitely encouraging all the BBN teams to sign up. FBB board members have signed up, staff have signed up to do some kind of craft. So for the entire month, for the next month. Cool. And also, raise money.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think we all found during the pandemic, like the problems we knew that were there were worse than we thought they were and got worse under COVID. And so it's been very heartening to me to see the way secular communities have sort of risen to that need and responded. Yeah.
Absolutely. And the unexpected weather events as well.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, that was rough for sure. One of the things that I always do around this time of year, you mentioned the day of prayer. I always, so the way the county board sends out their requests to do invocations, which I think are stupid and we shouldn't be doing them at all, but whatever, is that I try to be like the first to respond and snap up the week that is the National Day of Prayer. And so I will be giving an invocation at the Polk County Board of County Commissioners that week.
Oh, nice.
So that's one of the
awesome.
things I do. All right, but anyway, that's April 30th through May 9th. But you can do stuff all month long, and again, find local events and groups near you that you can join in on. All right. Well, next week on the show, we're going to have Equality Florida's Public Policy Director, John Harris, is going to join us for a conversation about more Florida legislature stuff. I know you're so happy to hear about more Florida legislature stuff, but we're going to specifically talk about things that are impacting the GSRM community. We've heard in the last couple of weeks some anti-trans sports youth things that you have to play on the sports ball team in middle school of the gender that you were assigned at birth, blah, blah, blah. It's awful. And then all of this stuff about you can opt your kids out of education about sexuality if you want to. And there's just so much to talk about on that topic too. So we'll do that. That's next Friday at 6:30 Eastern, 5:30 Central. And that's it for Freethought in Florida this week. Freethought in Florida is available on YouTube, Facebook, and popular podcast players. You can find all the subscribe links at fif.show and send us an email to info@fif.show. Please like, subscribe, and share out all the episodes. Help us reach a broader audience. And of course, remember the 3 most important things: wash your hands, wear your mask, and be kind to each other. Thank you, Allie. We'll talk to you again soon. Everybody, be safe. We'll see you on the next Freethought in Florida.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, Monica.